Second hour, halftime on a Monday. Guess what just came across here? I guess we should have expected it. Right as Sam Pittman is beginning his Zoom press conference with, I don't think it's just Arkansas media. You're going to have Georgia media, other media that cover college football that want to get some insight from the head Razorback coach. You know what else we have? And this was, remember we asked this, we mentioned this on Friday after Coach Pittman joined us for what I thought was a great conversation here on halftime. Like the one thing we didn't have, the one thing we now have, it is a depth chart. It has been released. Yes. There is a chart of depth for Arkansas on both sides of the football. Just another sign that the season is right here amongst us. For a moment, I wondered if everybody would have to be, Jim Harbaugh this year and say, nah, not going to do that old depth chart thing. But here it is.
Hey, at least there's not an or at the quarterback position.
Oh, my gosh.
There's ors at a couple other spots, but there's no at quarterback.
No QB1A, no QB1B. You do have KJ Jefferson as your backup, so there's,
that's fine.
I guess you're like quarterback breaking news. He beat out Malik Hornsby for that position. Although, from what Sam Pittman told us on Friday, that can't be a surprise. He mentioned Jefferson as one of the standouts from camp in a surprisingly good way. All right, so that's something we definitely need to break down as we go throughout this last hour on halftime. But we've got Nate Olson joining us. He is one of the co-hosts of the Fearless Friday, the Friday night scoreboard show right here on ESPN Arkansas and our affiliate in Northwest Arkansas, ESPN 99.5. Nate, 3 weeks of the season are complete. How are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be talking about football, high school football, and a few cancellations every week, but we're hanging in there.
What was canceled last week? How many games? I put you on the spot there, but how many games?
Yeah, there were four. And I don't have them all right in front of me. I know one of them was DeWitt and Stuttgart. They were scattered around the state among the classes. Northside got back into action, went to Moore, Oklahoma, and won. They had to cancel their game the week before. But if you remember that Harbor game or Greenwood game that they were supposed to play, then they played Harbor, but Northside did not play that week, but then rebounded. So they're getting through it, and they're doing it with a limited number of spectators, although there was a pretty good number of fans in the stands for the Bryant game, and we'll get to that in a minute. But they sold about 100 tickets at the local Big Red convenience store here, and then other tickets were dealt to the players, families, and band and cheerleaders. So I know some people that were there. They said it was a decent crowd. I saw some pictures. There was actually more people there than I thought, and it was quite loud. I watched the game on stream, and it was a pretty good atmosphere. We'll get to that in a minute. But, yeah, this has been, to me, a surprise that we've gotten this far, really. And when I talked about this in July, I didn't even know if we'd get through the month of September, and we're almost through it. So that's good. People wearing their masks, socially distanced. The administrators and coaches are taking this very seriously. So it's so far so good. Just a few blips, but otherwise pretty good.
I guess the headlines from the weekend would be Arkansas teams did very well playing out of state against teams out of Texas. I saw Pulaski County beat a team out of Pulaski Academy beat a team out of Virginia, Oklahoma as well. So this is great for the state of Arkansas as far as, comparing the level of football here to some of the states surrounding us. What stood out to you as far as Arkansas teams beating out of state teams?
Well, what stood out to me was that they were great teams they beat. It's one thing to play. There's one particular team, Missouri, that's made the rounds here that isn't very good. It's one thing to beat them, Springfield area team, but it's another when like Bentonville goes to Shawnee, Kansas, it's a suburb of Kansas City, and beats Mill Valley 35-28. So that's 3 out-of-state non-conference games, including Rockhurst the week before, or the game before, which is also a perennial power in Kansas City. A really impressive game. Mill Valley is defending state champion there, and they Bentonville needed a 10-play, 80-yard drive that was capped off by Josh Ficklin crashing into the end zone for 5 yards out. That was late in the game. That was the go-ahead score. And then Johnny Anderson sealed it with an interception in the red zone. So Bentonville played really, really good. That was a hard-fought win against a really good team. So that stands out a lot. And you're kind of looking to see what is the gap between Bryant, North Little Rock, and Bentonville. Bryant's the clear-cut number one, but what is the gap? And could one of those teams beat them? North Little Rock is athletic enough to, and Bentonville, I think, is strong enough to. And I don't know about the speed, but when you go to Mill Valley and win, and you're 3-0, that looks good and looks good for the state. And then what Bryant did to Trinity Christian, and really from the beginning dominated them. And I was watching the game with my son JD, 11 years old, and I said, I don't know Jackson State will want prime time after the way he's called his first half. Really not a very good strategy against that Bryant defense, but they made some adjustments in the second half and came out roaring. And Shadur Sanders, Dion's son, really, really put on a show in the second half. And Bryant, I think the one thing that they would take away from this, they won 44-40, but I think the one thing they take away from it is that they need to be a little bit more sure tackling. And that second half, now Sanders is hard to tackle. I mean, he's one of the best players in the country, but they had some issues with that, but they overcame it, and they got behind in the game. And Austin Ledbetter led them on a drive at the end of the ball game. He looks really great. He's a baseball commit to the University of Arkansas, but Phil, I think he could be a Division I quarterback. And I vote in the Landers Award. I would think that that's his award to lose right now. The way Bryant plays, a 20-game winning streak, he makes play after play, and he ran for about 10 yards into the end zone, scrambled in for the go-ahead score, and then they were able to get Sanders to throw an incomplete pass on a drive to end it, so the defense responded too. So that was great. I think everybody that called in the show was all celebrating each other, that Arkansas football looked really good. I've said for a long time that per capita, Arkansas is one of the most talented high school football states in the country and one of the most underrated. It's just they're smaller. It's a smaller sample size. We have smaller towns and people, smaller population, but great talent, and the coaching here is fantastic. You could take a lot of these coaches and put them anywhere in the country, and they'd win ball games.
Speaking to Nate Olson here on halftime, Nate, I want to go back to Bryant just for a second. I mean, you mentioned last week how big a victory against Trinity Christian would be for Bryant as far as becoming like that kind of a national brand, kind of in the same breath with Pulaski Academy, just being in that upper echelon of national high school programs. Did that victory, just like you said, they dominated the first half. You say what you will about the second half, they still came away with the 44-40 victory. Did that put Bryant in the national scale?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, because, there were several outlets. I was there for the pregame, and, there were several regional outlets that covered this game, overtime, and different groups, media people from around the region that covered this. So, yes, it will definitely help the reputation. And Deion Sanders was very complimentary of Bryant coaching staff and the players that he said they really prepared for us and worked hard, and there were some things that we need to work on after watching or seeing this game and going back and eventually watching the film. So yes, whenever Sanders is saying those kinds of things and the coverage, it's a big feather in their cap. They've won 20 straight games, and I think the momentum and the coverage and the publicity for them is only going to get greater if they can continue to win, and they would get closer to this. They keep the streak going and get closer to a three-peat championship opportunity.
Got a text in here. This comes from JP in Alma. He's wanting to see if you could give us a quick preview of the Van Buren game happening this weekend. They're traveling to Siloam Springs this weekend. You got a quick preview for Van Buren versus Siloam?
Well, I think that those are two surprise teams that have both played well so far that maybe a lot of teams wouldn't expect, or people wouldn't have expected that. I think it was Siloam beat Harrison, and their radio broadcasters were complimentary of them. And so I think that's a big game as far as, teams trying to get in the playoffs. Both of them are trying to get into that upper echelon. They're kind of upstart teams in that league. And so I've been impressed with both of them. I think one of them has a chance to kind of shock some teams there, and I'd probably give the edge to Crosby Tuck's group. I think they've got a little bit more talent, and he's been able to kind of continue the system and the growth that Casey Dick had, and kind of get that torch passed. And so I think Van Buren is going to surprise a few people, and this game should be good though.
You look at some other games that are on tap for this week or this coming Friday night. You start conference playing most of the conferences this week. You got Harbor taking on Bentonville. You got Fort Smith Northside taking on Bryant. Little Rock Catholic at Cabot. You got some good lower classification games. My BB Badgers, who haven't won a game yet, but they take on Little Rock Hall this Friday. What are some games? Yep. What are some games of the week for Nate Olson this week?
Sure, yeah. One of them for sure is Bentonville West at Fayetteville, and I had that marked on the calendar for a while because I think when you're talking about the Central and the West, you've got in the Central Bryant entrenched at the top, and probably North Little Rock right behind him in the West. You've got Bentonville, and then you've got a couple of cluster teams that are trying for that, maybe to challenge Bentonville, but maybe the second, third, and fourth spots, and they're kind of jumbled together. So I feel like this game is one of those that whoever comes away with it is going to have a better chance to contend with Bentonville and have that opportunity to be in that upper echelon. The thing that I want to keep an eye on with Fayetteville is there's some COVID cases there. The school did announce that. And so I don't know how that's going to affect. I mean, the game is still on. I assume it is. But how that will affect them and their personnel and who's all going to be there. They were a little banged up anyway, injury-wise. So that could be a really big game. I hope Fayetteville can be at full strength so we see a good game there. And Fayetteville 0-3, they've kind of got some negative momentum going there now with the sickness. Need to rebound to get ready for the conference. I've also got the Harbor-Bentonville game pretty big. I think Harbor hasn't played as well as they can, and they need to get that going Friday night because Bentonville is really playing well, as we mentioned. And another couple games in 6A, Parkview at Greenwood. This is probably Parkview's biggest game since like the 83 when Keith Jackson played there and they were playing for state championships. Brad Boulding feels very, very good about this group. And they've got Landon Rogers, a quarterback who's an Arkansas commit. They're very talented. Greenwood has a very good defense, but their top two quarterbacks were injured. One, LD Richmond was hurt going into the game, and Hunter Houston, who came in for him, got hurt. So they're a little banged up. Their defense played really good. So that's probably the biggest game for Parkview, like I said, since the 80s. If they win that game, you have to think that they are a state championship contender. So they're really keyed up for that. And then a team we haven't mentioned much, but I want to, is Mountain Home. They snapped a 23 or 4 game losing streak and 2 weeks ago, and then won again against Batesville. They play at Lake Hamilton, and Lake Hamilton, a team that's been in the top 5 all year in preseason, mentioned maybe as a state championship contender. A run-oriented team that could, kind of go against them when you play a Benton or a Greenwood because they're high octane, but they have a pretty good defense. Saw them play on TV the other night against Hot Springs. This will be a big litmus test for Mountain Home. They feel like they've kind of turned a little bit of the corner, but this is going to be a big test for them. And, how good are they? They've got the new coach from Missouri. He's definitely implemented some better offense. They had over 500 yards last week, but this will be a stiff test. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And I know the Mountain Home people would just be elated if they could win this game after so much losing.
Man, Nate, that's as thorough as an Encyclopedia Britannica entry. Well done, as always. Look forward to Friday's show and having you on Monday next week.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Nate.
You got it. By the way, for those who just heard those words for the first time, there used to be these books, these very large books that we would buy, 26 of them, one for each letter.
Okay.
And this was essentially like a Wikipedia thing that was published in actual print form. And you couldn't go back and edit these entries after you bought these things, called an encyclopedia.
Oh.
There was one that was Britannica, there was one that was World Book, and you're never going to see these things ever again for as long as you live. You do need to go to hitthatline.com. Enter to win a Traeger Ironwood 650 pellet grill valued at $1,199 right in time for football season. Just go to hitthatline.com, click on the Traeger grill button, fill out the entry form. Boom, you're entered. You can enter through Friday. The winner's announced on the Morning Rush. And go to bradstv.com to find the full line of Traeger grill spices, pellets, and accessories. And if you buy a Traeger grill from Brad's from now through Saturday, you get a free Traeger grill cover at $80 value.